Shall we talk about what I believe to be the best fights in UFC flyweight history? Yeah, let's. My word. I've watched this fight twice already, Figueiredo versus Moreno. It was just incredible. Technically, like heart, skill, it had it all. You know, drama, nut shots, eye pokes, you know, everything and more. Everything for the casuals all the way through to the diehards. It had absolutely everything. Thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, a massive round of applause to both Figueiredo and to Moreno. They just did everything that they possibly could to try and win that fight. There is some stuff to unpackage here though, and I'm not sure which way I'm going to do it. I've even got notes for this. I want to get into the judging and how it was scored, because it was a draw, which means that the belt remains around the waist of the Brazilian. Yeah, I think I'll leave that after. Let's celebrate a little bit more, shall we? And go through this, because at times I was wincing. And wincing in a good way. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. I think round 3 in particular was one of those rounds where the exchanges were just sparking. It was just magnificent stuff. Loved it. A few things that I was wondering about, and I have to say I'm slacking. I was going to go back and watch some of Figueiredo's fights to see whether what I'm thinking held true. And I'm not sure if there was slight overconfidence from Figueiredo. He's got a swag about him, and I'm not sure if I just associate that with him now because of the crazy last sort of 6 months that he's had, or whether he's always held that. But I felt like he just walked in there and he just kind of put a lot of confidence in his chin and was just throwing. I mean, I know he throws hard, but that combination of my chin's good and I'm going to knock you out. And I don't know whether he was always like that in the earlier days. Can't go back that far because it's an evolving fighter, but maybe like 4 fights ago. But I didn't get to do it. So I need to go back and check that out. Because on the other side, Moreno wasn't someone who necessarily hung his chin out there. And he wasn't someone that necessarily was putting stock in his chin. It was just sort of part of his game. He was still trying to defend all of those things, whereas Figueiredo was just a bit kind of like taking it, walking forward, slipping every now and then. But Moreno was doing his best to get out of the way of the shots. But Figueiredo just blasts through your guard. You know, he hits as hard as like a featherweight. But Moreno was so tough. Anyway, he was just magnificent, Figueiredo. Like his choice of shots, his ground game's phenomenal, and I just thought that he had that fight. That I did feel like he won it, and even with the point deduction, I didn't have it for a draw. I still had it for Figueiredo. We'll get onto that in a second. Round 4. Round 4 was bonkers, quite frankly. Lovely boxing by Moreno. I thought it was his round. Really lovely stuff. Fantastic. But then he sort of came to a bit of a grinding halt in the 5th. Otherwise, maybe we would be talking about Moreno as the new champion. Yeah, I thought he did a good job, but it was crazy stuff, wasn't it? And then we learned that Figueiredo was sick. He had food poisoning the night before the fight. The UFC knew about it, but he was medically cleared. He still wanted to go through. And on the other side, you had Brandon Moreno, this young kid who, this is his 2nd term in the UFC. So he's been let go of before by the UFC. I think he was like the last pick as well on the Ultimate Fighter. So what a turnaround. Like, just well done. Well done for sticking at it and coming with such a positive attitude, going back to the gym and keep getting better. And now he gets a rematch, you know, deservingly so. It was classed as a draw, but even if it was a Figueiredo win, then I think that the UFC would have made this a rematch anyway. Let's talk about the judging, shall we? And I did score the fight after watching it again, and I went back and I looked at the stats. And it was quite interesting, actually. And the stats are always a little misleading, and I should know well, as a commentator, I fall into the trap sometimes, but some stats are better than others. But the big thing about the stats, when you're talking striking, is we have significant strikes, right? But how significant is a significant strike? Does that make sense? Because Figueiredo strikes largely were more significant than 80% of Moreno's strikes. And when judges are looking to score these things, they are looking to score more closely. Let me start that again. They are looking for the more immediately impactful shots, not the cumulative damage. And I think we'd all agree, right? Those kind of what looked like fight-ending shots were coming from Figueiredo. There were a few from Moreno, don't get me wrong, but Figueiredo landing hard shots. They score more. They score more. Two big shots from Figueiredo score more than a four-punch combination from Moreno if it doesn't hit with the same impact. That's just what the judges are looking for. And let's not even get into the ground stuff. We will get into the ground stuff. Round 1, 10-9 Figueiredo. But you go to the board and they have exactly the same significant strikes. Now, this is one of the only times where you will then start considering things like aggression. And if we do go down to aggression, then you've got to give it to Figueiredo. So the judges do not have the significant strike count. It's not available to them. And actually the significant strike count that you saw on the broadcast is not the same as what's on UFC stats right now, because someone goes back right after the fights and then they do the official stat counts on whatever it might be, not just the strikes, everything. They go back and they analyse the fights from a statistical standpoint, and that's what goes into the history books. So, and there were some big differences there. Some of them were quite different indeed, but the judges had neither, of course. They couldn't look into the future and they didn't see anything real time. So it's kind of a moot point, but I went back and looked at it. So theoretically, round 1, both have the same amount of significant strikes. So then you've got to look down to effective grappling. I think now I'm going to memory. Even if there was a takedown from Moreno, he didn't do anything with it, i.e. he didn't look to finish the fight by way of strikes or a submission attempt. Therefore, it doesn't count because Figueiredo got back to his feet. So it's just a change in position. So you can't count it. So then you go down to aggression. If you can't separate them on striking or grappling. And if you can't separate them on aggression, then you go down to octagon control. I think you give it to Figueiredo on aggression. And if you can't give it to him on aggression, you give it to him on octagon control, because he was keeping Moreno against the fence, and he's a very interesting tactic of crossing his feet quite explicitly, which I think upsets a lot of people's base. But he's got a weird way of way he carries his posture. It seems to work for him. He's the champ. Who am I? Right, round 2. A lot of people say Moreno won that round. I scored it 10-9 for Figueiredo. And I think people will be looking at the 2 takedowns from Moreno. More strikes from Figueiredo. 2 takedowns from Moreno, didn't do anything with them. Didn't do anything with them. And is this the round where I believe Figueiredo was on his back and started to strike, either elbow, but he was striking with hard shots from his back. More significant strikes. He didn't get hit. He's doing the damage. Just because it's on his backside doesn't really mean anything, especially if Moreno isn't hitting him with bigger shots. 2018 to this point. Now we get to round 3, and I had Figueiredo winning that, but then we have a point deduction, so that goes to a 9-9. We move forward to round number 4. Moreno's best round of the fight. I think that's a unanimous thought as well. His boxing was just brilliant. Then we move forward to the 5th and final round. For some reason, Moreno slows down. And I think he gets outstruck quite significantly by Figueiredo. So I give that one to Figgy. Landed twice as many significant strikes. I just said Figgy, didn't I? Someone did this on Inside the Octagon. On Inside the Octagon Extra, gave it like, I'm sorry, Figueiredo. I actually don't like Figgy as a name, but it's entered my grey matter now. Apologise for that. So there you go. That's how I scored it. So even though he had a point deducted, I still had rounds 1, 2 and 5 to Figueiredo, but the judges collectively saw it different. I'm not mad about a draw, it's just not how I had it. But what a fight. I'd happily go watch that again. It really was quite something. Sounds like both fighters need a little bit of time now. They're both family men. Figueiredo goes back to Brazil. Moreno goes back to Mexico. Let them rest. And it looks like we will see that fight once again in 2021. If it's in the first quarter, fantastic. But I'm willing to wait. If it's as good as that last one, I'm willing to wait for the summer for that. All right, that's all of these now, and I don't know what order you've been watching them, but this was my kind of post-mortem from UFC 256. More videos coming your way from a trip that I had recently to Wales. So look out for that. Thanks for checking it out, and I'll see you soon.